Hey folks, so this week I want to talk about video games that had a major impact on me. Games that were like, the first time I played them I was like, whoa, from over the years. And there are a lot of games that are like this for me, but kind of narrowed it down to just four. Or, well, just because otherwise this would be a long video, if I talked about all the games that had like a huge impact on me. But, let's get into it. So the first one is Killer Instinct. More specifically, the original arcade version. Don't get me wrong, this is a great port, it's still fun to play after all these years, but I remember first hearing about Killer Instinct from game magazines back in the early mid-90s, because it was released in arcades in 94, I believe. It was 94. But anyhow, where was I going with this? So I remember, I was hearing about it in game magazines, and then it was actually at the arcade that used to be across the street from my mom's house back in the 90s. That I've talked about that in other videos. I think that closed in like 2010s. It wasn't the same anymore, anyways. But that's beside the point. So it was there. After hearing about it in game magazines and stuff, and I was really excited for it, my brother and I. And I remember it just like, for one thing, it was one of those like huge arcade cabinets. Like it had like all the, not surround sound type of thing or something, but I remember it had like stools and everything to sit on, and everything about that game, just like the graphics and sound and everything, just completely blew me away. I'm like, whoa, this is like amazing. I don't think it'll ever get better than this, which obviously it did over the years, but that's beside the point. And it was just like, and part of the reason for that was because it was like, other fighting games for the time, like obviously there was a number of them, but obviously the biggest ones were like Mortal Kombat or Mortal Kombat games, which used digitized actors, and the like 5 different versions of Street Fighter 2, which had kind of like an action cartoon style to it, and those were great games. Hell, they still are, but it was like Killer Instinct came along and it was just like, damn, like this is amazing, like the graphics and the sound and just everything about it is just, whoa. Another thing that I loved about it, and actually still do, was because it was just such a random collection of characters. Like, you have a robot, a ninja, a boxer, a Native American, a raptor, a fire and ice guy, a skeleton, a werewolf, and a woman in leather, which obviously as I got older, I understood the story and characters' backgrounds more, but at the time, because I was like 7 years old and I had a wild imagination, I was like, oh, this is awesome. It's just so random compilation of characters, which, like I said, as I got older, I understood why, but yeah. So, the next one is Suikoden 2, or Suikoden, however you prefer to say it. I think Suikoden is the right way to say it, but I prefer saying Suikoden. But, for starters, this is actually a reproduction, copy, because the real thing is rare and expensive. My brother has the real thing, but, it's actually a pretty good quality, with the case and artwork and everything. But anyway, this game, I remember Suikoden was the games I always knew of. Like, I remember watching my brother play them and stuff, but that's beside the point. This was the first one I played back in high school in 2004, I want to say. And when I was playing it, I was just so, like, it just sucked me in. Like, the story was just so, like, I was just so, like, entranced by the story. It just, like, whoa, like, I was, so deep in depth, and I can't think of the word, but you get what I'm saying. Like, that's just the kind of impact this game. And I remember, God, like, I would come home from high school, I was probably got home around, like, 2:30 in the afternoon. I'd pop this in my PS1 and play it till, like, 7 o'clock at night or something. It was just like, damn, like, it just, such a, I mean, I actually just started playing this again. I had played the first one, then I started playing this one. But this is such an amazing RPG. It's literally the best JRPG I've ever played in my life. I know I said RPG, JRPG, whatever. But, like the story and the music, everything about it is just absolutely amazing. And actually, to this day, I think it has one of the greatest villains in video game history. That's Luca Blight. Well, he's not, because the story, like, kind of twists and turns. So there's actually like multiple villains in the game. Luca Blight isn't necessarily the main villain of the game, or kind of is at one point, but you might be thinking, like, what makes him such a great villain? Well, let's see. As the leader of the Highland Army, because that's the point, it's like this game, it's a war going on between two different armies. But he, as the leader of the Highland Army, let's see, he kills one of his own generals because he fails to defeat your army, the hero's army. He kills his own father because he's holding him back, I guess is the way to put it. Tries to chop the head off a little girl who's actually on the cover right here. Her name is Palika. He burns 2 villages to the ground. He summons this giant 2-headed wolf demon to devour an entire city, and there's quite a bit more to it than that, but yeah, the thing about Luca, he's just completely maniacal, and he has like this inhuman strength, like, you know, he's just, yeah. So next is Gears of War 3, which, now, I liked all the Gears of War games, even the 5th one, which I thought that one was okay. Like, I talked about that in my Xbox One collection video. I thought the game was, it was good, but it wasn't, like, as great as the other ones. Like, it was, But this one, I think, the second one is my favorite, but this one probably had the biggest, like, impact on me. For one thing, this was, like, the first one I played upon release, because it was released in 2011. You know, I didn't get my Xbox 360 until 2009, and the first 2 games were released before that, so, you know, like, this was, like, the first one that I played, like, personally, so to speak, or that I played upon release, I should say, and because I didn't have, like, Xbox 360, Xbox Live for the first few years I haven't my 360, this was, like, the first one that I played online. I played a little bit of the second one online, but not much. This one I played online quite a bit, and it was just, to this day, I think this one had the best online. Like, you know, 4th one was also good, 5th one, they kind of really dropped the ball with that, but that's the whole other story. And Judgment was pretty good too, but yeah, still I think 3rd is the best. It has the best online. Like, you know, there's all the different, like, multiplayer modes, and then there's the Horde mode, and then I think it was called Beast mode, which is like basically the opposite of Horde mode. Like, you play as the Locust battling against the Gears, or the Cog, excuse me. And so this was just, like, another thing was, the thing I love most about the Gears of War games, like, the multiplayer is kind of just like a bonus. It's more so the story that I always cared about. And in this one, it was just so, I think 2, 3, and 4, the Gears of War games are the saddest, but, I mean, those ones are sad, but I think this one is probably the saddest. Like, you know, it's just a very emotional game. Like, you know, when you look, the death of Dom, and then, you know, Marcus's father, Adam, and then at the end, Marcus is just like, what's left? Like, there's nothing. Like, you know, he lost his best friend, he lost his father, and it's just like, what else is there to live for? What's left? Like, it's just such an amazing game, and it's just like, yeah. So the last one, Wolfenstein: The New Order. Now, I talked about this before, but if you're new here or don't know or whatever, I'll keep it real with you. I never really got into the Wolfenstein games that much. I always knew of them, like the old one back on PC in the 90s, and there was like the reboots for like PS2 and Xbox, the original Xbox and stuff. You know, it was a series I knew of, but I just never really got into it for some reason. And then quite a few years ago, when I learned about the newer ones, like, and I was like, oh, I kind of should check these out. So I started with the New Order because Old Blood takes place before this, but it came out after. You know, it's a prequel. But this one, this game just, I was just like, so, I played, when I first, you know, this was the first Wolfenstein game I ever actually played, and I was just like, oh, look, this is amazing. Like, this is, and I love the take on it, like the story, I love what they would do with it, like, and it was one of those games that I hated to see it end, even though I can obviously replay it and stuff, but it was like, I hated to see it end because it was just so good. Like, this is probably on my top 10 list of, like, favorite games of all time. It's definitely one of my favorite games of the 2010s. It's just, you know, basically, yeah, but it's just such an amazing game. If you know, it's definitely a must-play game. You know, like I said, it's a great take on it. How it's like, it's called the New Order because basically the Nazis won World War II and they rule the world. So then Blazkowicz like joins a resistance to rise up against them, and it takes place like in the '60s, like years later or something. But that's yeah. But like I said, that's such an amazing game. So those are just some of the games that have like a huge impact on me. Are there any that had impact on you? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.